Hi guys, it's Marc Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Marc Zicree of Space Command and Star Trek, and the upcoming Twilight Zone Companion 3rd edition coming out any day now. You can order it on Amazon. But for this, I am the Incredible Hulk writer Marc Zicree talking about Avengers Infinity War. The Incredible Hulk, you say? But Marc Zicree wrote The Incredible Hulk? Yes. Back in 1983, Michael Reeves and I wrote an episode of the animated Hulk that Marvel did, and we wrote the episode The Hulk Destroys Bruce Banner. And if you go on my Facebook page or if you go online, you can find it and watch the entire episode in all of its green splendor. And but of course, my history with Marvel goes much farther back than that, because as a kid, the Marvel age of enlightenment began, and so I actually, as a kid, and this is a story, of course, that many kids of my generation have, I bought Avengers #1, I bought Daredevil #1, I bought the early editions of the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man and all of that stuff, and of course, sold most of my comic book collection when I was a stupid teenager, and I have some of those comics still. I've got, first appearance of the Black Panther, which you saw in one of the other Mr. Sci-Fi videos, etc. Got this little action figure of Daredevil, which is a little good luck piece, and so forth. But of course, all of us have that story in our history, one way or another. Something that we shouldn't have gotten rid of that we did. But today I'm going to talk about Avengers Infinity War. And this is, from what I hear, it's the top grossing movie of all time, which is okay with me because it's not a bad movie. Not a bad movie at all. It's I was surprised because with all of the characters that are in it, I thought it was going to be a kitchen sink movie, and it sort of is. It's like, well, here are the Avengers, and here come Guardians of the Galaxy, and well, look at, who else is coming around the bend. It's like basically everybody, you can imagine. I mean, Doctor Strange is in it, my God. But because it's well written and well structured and well plotted, it's actually a fun movie. I very much enjoyed it, and I'll talk about many of the things they did right, and some of the inherent weaknesses of the superhero movie, because there are inherent weaknesses. I am not a fan of superhero movies in general. I've seen many of them, and I find them diverting. It's good to be in a dark room with popcorn, and you can watch them if they're reasonable. But some of the weaknesses of these movies I'll speak to. Now, I'll try not to have spoilers about the Avengers movie, but I will talk about 2001 perhaps and spoil that if you haven't seen it. But in terms of Avengers Infinity War, it's close to 3 hours long. It's directed by the Russo brothers, who've done a number of the Marvel films before. It has all of the movie stars under the heavens. It's got, Chris Hemsworth and Robert Downey and Scarlett Johansson and Mark Ruffalo and Benedict Cumberbatch and on, Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana and Tom Hiddleston and Stan Lee, of course, doing his wonderful cameo. He's 95 now, amazing. It'll be such a shame when there's no more Stan Lee around, because he is one of a kind, and I've actually met him, and if you looked at one of my previous Mr. Sci-Fi videos, you can actually see him on our Space Command set, and that was a great honor. And he actually signed some comic books for me, and I probably will show them to you sometime in the near future. But again, this is such a movie that's cram-packed with so much that Idris Elba, who's a movie star in his own right, barely appears. He has blink and you'll miss him. Peter Dinklage plays a giant dwarf, which is very, very fun. Vin Diesel's the voice of Groot, Bradley Cooper's the voice of Rocket, and so forth. Gwyneth Paltrow's in it as Pepper Potts, one of the goofy Marvel names. And importantly, Josh Brolin plays Thanos, the villain, and this is a great choice, because they invest the villain with great emotion and what he's trying to do with, reduce the populations of planets, but not eradicate humanity, not take over the world. So he's got a different agenda than most villains. They've, of course, planted the seeds of this movie and many other Marvel films. Iron Man debuted 10 years ago. There have been 18 Marvel films up to this one. And you can see why everyone and their mother is going to this, because everyone's been watching the other ones. And this is the culmination. And then there'll be a part 2 a year from now that basically puts the dots the I and crosses the T and so forth. And but this is a very fun movie. It's got a lot of action. It's got a lot of characters. The jokes work for the most part. It's very fun having Thor, bantering with with Captain America, but because they both sport beards. It's fun to have Robert Downey as Iron Man bantering with Benedict Cumberbatch, who calls him something I won't repeat here, but it's very fun to have him call him that. And Scarlett Johansson gets to be blonde in this as opposed to a redhead. Mark Ruffalo has some Hulk problems that are very amusing, and it's not just doing what we've seen before. It's doing new stuff, and the collision of characters like the Guardians of the Galaxy characters interacting with Thor, etc., is fun. And the notion that Zoe Saldana is the daughter, her character is the daughter of the villain, works well. There's a lot of emotion in this film, and I'm sure you've heard that. This isn't a spoiler because they say it in everything. There are characters who die, and I won't say which characters, but I'll say this. This is one of the inherent problems of superhero movies, which is when you see a movie like 2001, when Frank Poole is killed by Hal, he stays dead. When the astronauts in hibernation are killed by Hal, they stay dead. There's an emotional weight to it because they're dead. They're really dead as characters. And true, Arthur C. Clarke resurrected Frank Poole in one of the 2001 sequel novels. I think it was 3001. But very few people were reading that. It doesn't feel real in a certain way because it's not really a sequel to the movie. And even the sequel to the movie, 2010, was not really a sequel to the movie. It was kind of funky in its way, but fun. But fun. I recommend it. Roy Scheider's great. Helen Mirren's great. But in superhero movies, anytime any character dies, the strong likelihood, if they're a hero or even a villain, is that one way or another they're going to be back. And that was true in the comic books too. One of the reasons why I personally preferred the DC comics when I was a kid, Superman, Green Lantern, etc., was because those stories ended and our heroes won. Whereas in the Marvel universe, the stories never ended. And one could say, well, that's like life. But yeah, it's okay. And the characters were very neurotic and so forth. And it was just a matter of personal taste and probably my age. If I'd been a teenager, I might have gravitated more toward the Marvel universe, or if I had more drama in my life, I suppose. Trauma, not drama. I have plenty of drama in my life. But that said, I do appreciate them and value them. And someone recently said to me, the cool thing about the Marvel characters is that their superpowers don't solve their problems. And that's true, and that's interesting. And another friend of mine was talking about Howard the Duck, who's a great unexploited character because they made a terrible movie with him, and he appears in one little cameo thing after one of the Marvel movies, but he's waiting for his great opportunity. Because I read Howard the Duck when I was a young adult and really liked the comic, and was very sad that they screwed it up so badly in the movie. But Avengers Infinity War does a great job. It really uses its hundreds of millions of dollars well. It's there on the screen, and you could do a lot worse with this kind of movie. I mean, again, the DC movies have been much more hit and miss. Wonder Woman was a good film, but again, I like Henry Cavill as Superman, and I'm a little less, fond of Ben Affleck as Batman. Batman is basically, I have a problem with Batman, particularly on screen. I liked Frank Miller's Dark Knight in the comics, and I bought those and I read them, though it leans very strongly towards vigilante justice, which is, of course, I guess the definition of Batman. But Ben Affleck and all these actors who play Batman in recent years, they just kind of have a gravelly voice and a monotone, and Batman goes from A to B and back again. I mean, there's just or even A to A, if you want to look at it that way. I mean, there's just no character arc, nothing. I mean, it's kind of grimness, and but still. Okay, so that said, I enjoyed many, many things. I like the fact that Thor calls Rocket Raccoon Rabbit. Very funny. And the jokes really do work. And I think that Marvel is in good hands in terms of its creative personnel, and the actors are very, very likable and very different, but they're very good actors. Mark Ruffalo and Robert Downey and Chris Hemsworth and on and on. I mean, these are actors who aren't just phoning it in. They're delivering, and it shows. Tom Hiddleston, as Loki, and so it's the really remarkable thing, and this is something I was saying to someone recently, was Bob Kane created one iconic character, Batman. Siegel and Schuster created one iconic character, Superman. But Stan Lee, think of it. I mean, with Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko to create, X-Men and the Avengers, Hulk, Thor, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange was Ditko, but so many characters over these years that have stood the test of time, and now more than 50 years later, almost 60, they're bigger than ever, and that's a phenomenal accomplishment. Stan Lee may be the most successful writer who's ever lived in terms of just gross dollars earned by his creations. Phenomenal, really amazing, and I think while he is with us, we should really celebrate him and celebrate his collaborators, and just be really glad he's made it to 95 to see all of this happen, because it must be very gratifying for him to know that something that came out of his head that didn't exist before has had such a long shelf life and will continue to into the foreseeable future. I mean, these are characters I think who will rank up there with Sherlock Holmes and many of the great creations of previous generations. So glad Stan is with us. Glad this movie is here, and glad I'm here with you guys. So that's it for now. But subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi. We're going to be doing the long-awaited video about Space Command and how things are going, which is great. There's a new project I'm working on that I can't talk about, but it's really phenomenal. You guys are going to be very thrilled when and if I can talk about it. But things are really amazing. So again, buy the new Twilight Zone companion. Subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi. Keep watching this space. You can friend me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter and all of that stuff. So until next time, it's Marc Zicree of Space Command, etc. And we'll talk to you really soon. Bye-bye, guys.